Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and welcome to a special edition of Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I'm here today to talk to you about why Asian and Pacific Islander representation matters, Part 3, television and music. So finally, I've gotten to the final part of this video, and it is Part 3. The reason why I had to chop it up is because, well, when I was doing the whole movies thing, like movies as a whole, I realized something. This is going on really, really long, to over, what was it? 2.5 hours or something like that. So I had to like, crap, that's gonna be hard to save and that's gonna take forever to upload. So I decided to chop it into 3 parts. I thought about editing some stuff out, but I felt like what I had to say was very important, so I kept it. And so here we are in the final chapter, part 3, television, why Asian representation matters. Okay, this is part 4. My bad. It seems that the television music one went on for way too long, and so I had to break part 3 up into 2 parts, so this is part 4. I'm sorry. Jenny Kwan, she plays Sam Wu on California Dreams. And like I said before, if it wasn't the Power Ranger lady, then it must have been her that was the first Asian person I remember seeing on television. And so, like, she played a foreign exchange student, which was interesting because she spoke like perfect English. So you'd think she would not be able to, but hey, it was the 90s. And she played an average, typical Valley girl, like, teenager. However, even though she played the Valley girl type, which is getting very annoying to see lots of Asian people play, at least the network was willing to put an Asian person on their show. Because the person who created it also created Saved by the Bell, Hang Time, and a couple of other shows, and he's never really put an Asian person in any of those shows except for US High. He plays a Filipino actor in there, but this was the first time, or second time, that he put like another Asian person on television. And like I said before, you didn't really get to learn too much about her background, like, other than the fact that, Chinese New Year and like how she stole her dead grandma's recipe to make money, and then her dead grandma like haunted her dreams, and so she stopped and everything. But it's like, it's a kids show. Well, it was more like a teenager show, a comedy series, and they are willing to have representation when a lot of adult shows don't. But the craziest one I ever seen came in PBS. PBS had a show that lasted for 2 or 3 seasons, and it was called The Puzzle Place. It was a show about puppets, a bunch of kids that would hang out in this, like, little rec center type place. And they had kids from, like, all around. They had a Native American boy, a Jewish girl, a Mexican girl. They had a black boy. They had a boy that was from Scandinavia. And then they had a Chinese American girl by Julie Wu. And she was really nice, very caring, sweet, loving a bit too much, and she loves to sing and everything. And this was a great representation of many different cultures, and they really taught you a lot about other cultures. And this was a kids' puppet show, a little preschool type show of all things. Sadly, however, the actress who voiced her and did her puppet work is not Asian. I believe she's white. The Magic School Bus was a cartoon series I loved and watched in the 90s on PBS. There you get to learn so much educational stuff. And there they had a diverse cast as well. And the great thing about this diverse cast, they was actually voiced by their actual race. Wanda Lee, who was voiced by Chinese Canadian voice actress Lisa Jia, she played Wanda. Wanda was a very feisty, bit of a stubborn girl, very smart, just like the rest of Miss Frizzle's class, and she was very adventurous. And she had her own catchphrase and everything. And in the reboot, she was voiced once again by an Asian character. This is important because in most cartoons that depict Asian people, they are not played by Asian celebrities. Case in point, Sailor Moon. I have talked about Sailor Moon to death, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But Sailor Moon was an anime that came out in the 90s and it appeared in America as well. And it's all about magic girls. Saving the World is one of the biggest animes of all time, to the point of getting rebooted to people still talk about today. It's been dubbed all around the world, twice in America. The first American version was very Americanized. The second one was more faithful for that of the anime. It's been rebooted. That's more similar to that of the manga. And she's one of the most powerful, most famous of them all superheroes. However, in the American version, the very first one, she was voiced by an entirely white cast. When they redubbed everything many years later, still a white cast except for two. Johnny Yong Bosch, who was a Power Ranger, he voiced Artemis, and a voice actress by the name of Stephanie, I can't pronounce her last name, she was the first American actress to ever voice that of Sailor Moon and has been doing so ever since. Ronin Warriors is another anime that is very amazing, and it came out in the 80s in Japan. It came out in the 90s in America. It's similar to that of Power Rangers and Sailor Moon, where you have a bunch of colorful heroes in suits and they fight the forces of evil. But once again, nobody of Asian descent voices any of the characters. In animation, they tend not to do this. A lot of cartoon series are voiced by Canadian voice actors. For some reason, I don't know why. And they always normally go with that of white. However, they are trying to change things nowadays with the next cartoon series I'm going to talk about. Digimon. Not Pokemon, because I never really watched Pokemon. But Pokemon's pretty famous as well. But Digimon is the one I love. And I only love the first two seasons. The fourth season and the third one's just okay. Other than that, I don't like none of the others. Digimon's the original first two or the first three are about a group of kids, and they get these animals that are their partners. They travel to the digital world where they have to save both the digital and the real world. However, when it comes to that of the original series, they're always voiced by white actors and stuff. However, in the reboot that's coming out soon, because it's finally getting an American dub, they have decided, I believe, to go with an Asian cast. It's about time. When it came to something like Sailor Moon, they Americanized it so much that they changed so much with the name pronunciations, the way they drive on the streets and everything else. But at least now they're trying to be more faithful to how things are supposed to be portrayed. Teen Titans is not anime. It's an American cartoon series that is influenced heavily by that of Japanese anime. And the creator, Glenn Murakami, I believe he's Japanese, took inspiration from a lot of anime and a lot of Japanese cartoons. And that was the look and feel for this series. Even some letters on buildings appearing in Asian lettering. Same as he did with Batman Beyond. And I remember watching this, I thought straight up, this has to be anime. I've never seen an American cartoon do things like this before. But it's one of the most beloved cartoons of all time. It's one of my all-time favorites and stuff. And, if it wasn't for an Asian influence, it probably would have looked very similar to how all the other American cartoons would have. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the most phenomenal cartoon series of all time. One would think it's anime, but it's not. It's an American cartoon that, just like with Teen Titans, takes its influence from that of Asian culture. It is set back in the olden times where everything is set in ancient like Asian countries and stuff. To the point where like, the people of the Earth Kingdom are Chinese, the Fire Kingdom or Fire Nation is Japanese, the Water Tribe people are indigenous institute, and so like the air nomads, I believe, are more like Tibetan monks and stuff. And you don't really learn nothing about Asian culture in this cartoon series, but like it has a different look, it has a different feel. The martial arts in this is exquisite. They actually got an actual martial artist. They copied his moves and they did hand drawn animation. The detail is something out of like, like something I've never seen before. It's so weird because I love this series so much and I want to talk about it so bad, but I can't even think about it 'cause I'm just so happy just thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but the craziest thing about this cartoon series is that two creators, are white, not even Asian. And all the stars in this are white as well, except for one Filipino actor, and I forget what Jenny Kwan is. And so, like, this is like I said before, it is up there on one of the top cartoons of all time. This like dominated the airwaves. It's like when you watch this, it feels real. It doesn't even feel like a cartoon. You really feel the movements as like, the characters are like, doing their martial arts, doing their bending. And that's because, they really, really focused when making this cartoon series. It's about a young boy who is the avatar. They talk about reincarnation in this cartoon series. And he is the one who's supposed to defeat all evil. He's supposed to defeat the Fire Nation. See, he hid for 100 years because he got frozen in ice. But he ran from his responsibilities as because of that, the world was pretty much like conquered by like the Fire Nation and stuff. So him and his ragtag team are traveling around the world to teach him the bending that he was supposed to learn 100 years ago. It teaches people about responsibility. It teaches people about forgiveness. It teaches people about redemption. It teaches people about leadership. It teaches people about wisdom. This is truly an amazing cartoon series. Everything that came afterwards, yeah. There was the live action movie that got completely whitewashed. How in the world do you do that? But then came out The Legend of Korra. It was promising at first until it wasn't. I originally liked it. I got kind of phased out of it very early. I think the third season, it just didn't do it for me. It was to the point where even Nickelodeon didn't care for the show no more, and they tried to get rid of it by putting it on their digital platform. Jackie Chan Adventures appeared on Kids WB. I remember this show. I watched a good amount of it until I realized Jackie Chan didn't voice his own character. Then I got mad and stopped watching it. But I wish I never stopped. I think it's on streaming somewhere, but I'm not really sure. It lasted for 5 seasons, and it follows that of a fictional Jackie, where he, I think, works in like a museum and he's trying to find all these talismans. In this universe, sorcery and Chinese folklore exist. Ghosts and demons and all this other stuff. And the demon, is the main bad guy. Kind of like, I think he was like a dragon or something like that. And he possesses one of his henchmen. And basically, they just go all around the world trying to find these talismans and trying to defeat the forces of evil. The real Jackie does appear in the show in live action segments where he like starts off and talks about like martial arts and discipline and stuff like that. But this other actor is the one who voices him. And his name is James Tsai, I think his name is. or C. And this show actually had an Asian cast. Not everybody was Asian, but the main characters that are supposed to be Asian were Asian. And that's a great thing right there, Like they really took this seriously. And this show is kind of like forgotten, to tell you the truth. Nobody ever talks about it no more. But it was a really cool show back in the day. The Bureau of Magical Things is an Australian show, and it stars that of Kimi Tusako Kyushi. I'm sure how to say her name. Tokaka Sashi. I'm loving. I don't know how to say her last name, but she plays Kara, and Kara discovers that she has magical abilities. She's half elf, half fairy, and because of that, it's kind of like a Harry Potter thing. She has to learn how to control her magic and also help the magical world against like the people who want to corrupt it. It lasted for 3 seasons. I've talked about it on. I think it lasted for 2. Not 3. I think it lasted for 2 seasons. I talked about it on my channel before. And she was the main star. And it was a nice, fun, cool little show and everything. And it was cool how like the main star of the show was Asian and everything. They could have went with somebody else, but they decided not to. Are You Afraid of the Dark is a show that came out in the 90s. It's a kid horror show, and it lasted for 10 seasons. Basically, what it is about the Midnight Society, a group of kids who go out in the woods, and every episode, in the beginning and only in the end of the episode, this society like meet and they tell ghost stories. So basically they throw like this glitter into fire and they tell the story, and the story takes place in whatever universe they make up with a completely different cast. I'm not sure an actual Asian person was ever part of like the story part, but when it comes to that, the main cast that appears only in the beginning and the end of the episodes, I never remember seeing an Asian character. There's one boy. He might be Asian, but I'm not sure because he's not that famous and I can't find no information on him. However, when they rebooted everything in the 2010s, in the very last season of the Revival series, I forget what it's called. But in that one, they finally went. Well, actually, in the revivals, they've added Asian characters in there before, but it's only in the last one that they added a main Asian character. And for the most part, this is when I really started liking the show, because I never really liked this show before. I've watched many episodes, but I just can't get into it. But this last season is really, really intriguing and really good. However, I am unable to finish it because of the simple fact I didn't have Nickelodeon and stuff. And this is the only season that's not on streaming and does not have a DVD. Every season is on Paramount Plus except for the last one for some bizarre reason. Guidance season 3. Guidance is a show that deals with teen drama. It's a web series. And in the 3rd season, Diane Dong, she plays 2 characters, Faith and Grace, twins. One took her own life, so she has to investigate why her sister took her own life. And it deals that in teen drama, like kids making fun of kids, kids threatening kids, all kind of stuff like that, and exposing them. And it turns out this one girl caused her sister so much pain that her sister took her own life. The show, the 2nd and 3rd season are the best. The first one's okay, but it was cool how in the 3rd season they went with the Asian lead. Brienne Wu has been appearing in 3 web series and killing each and all of them. Like, she's doing a great job and everything. Light as a Feather, I talked about on my channel before, is a really good ghost story about like a curse. And there she plays one of the main characters. And the great thing is she's actually playing a main character, and a good one at that. Then she was in the Scream television series. There in the first season, not as much. She's just a recurring character who's literally there just to play the love interest of one character. And I hate when they do that, when they bring, because like the character, because they killed her in the first season as well. So she was only in a few episodes and she popped in, popped out, didn't have anything big or significant. And they did the same thing in the second season. They keep giving this character like a person of color to date, only to kill them off in the same season. So I hate when they want representation, but they do absolutely nothing with it. Then she was in I Know What You Did Last Summer, the television series. I hate that series. There was two Asian representation on the show. One dies in the first episode. Literally, like he barely had anything to say or do. But then Brienne character lasted all the way to the end because they decided to make her the killer and everything. Her character is very superficial. She plays the valley girl. I'm so tired of seeing that with Asian females. But she plays once again, like, but she plays this time a valley girl. But she is the killer of like the series. And like it sucks they made her the villain, but they did give her a huge, huge, huge role. Odd Squad is a hilarious Canadian show about a group of agents who are kids who solve like mysteries and crime with the power of math, and they take down adults. It's a hilarious show, the way even adults watch it. And in all three seasons, they've had Asian representation with their three main casts because they change up the cast every season. Philippe Jojo, he played Otto in the first season, and he was a very smart agent, a very reliable agent, but he wasn't always the brightest. He was mostly for comedic relief. He has gone on to the Avatar movies, the James Cameron ones where they like blue aliens and stuff. And Cart Cat, she was Agent Olympia, a very bubbly, enthusiastic, smart agent who like was one of the best agents of this show. One of my all-time favorite characters and stuff. And she went on to be in Zoe Valentine's and a bunch of movies. Something about the boy I never kissed or something like that it's called. But she's been in a bunch of like, romantic, predominantly Asian, like, movies and stuff. And then there's the third season. I didn't watch that, but I remember there was an Asian agent on there who time traveled. I think she was back in like, I don't know what time period. I think she was like a barbarian or something like that. And she got put in the present day and she became an agent. And she was just hilarious whenever I did like see her in episodes. It was played by Alyssa Hideago or something like that. And that's all I really know about her. In Disney's Bunked came the actress of Nina Liu, who played Tiffany for the first two seasons. Bunked has been on for 6 seasons, but she only appeared in the first 2. They decided to like bring in a bunch of new characters after that. Her character was mostly like, a fun-loving, very smart, intelligent girl. Bunked dealt with stereotypes, just like the show that came before it, Jessie. And so with here, she is a very intelligent character whose mother is always hounding her to study more, which, is, like I said before, something that happens in Asian society. But she played a very cool character, and I really miss that character a lot. Like, I really wish she would like make a guest appearance, or they'll just bring her back. Just Add Magic was an amazing show on Amazon Prime that lasted for 4 seasons. For the first 3 seasons had the same cast, and Amy Hill played Mama P. the villain of the first season. And she was a very mean, ruthless woman who later became a lot nicer in the second and third. She still had her edge to her, but she helped out the team whenever they could. This was a magic show about a magic cookbook. So it's like sorcery, but instead of like a wand, you use a cookbook. And it's a really cool and intriguing show. Then, after the third season, they tried to go in a different direction because the cast was getting a little bit older, the younger cast. And there came Just Add Magic Mystery City. And there they introduced a new character. The new character was introduced actually in the third season of the show named Zoe. And she's played by Jolie is it Hang Radenport? Sorry, I mispronounced your name. And so she became kind of like the leader of the new group in Mystery City and everything. And she was the second Asian representation the show had on the show. But Mystery City only lasted for one season. But she at least did get to appear in 2 seasons of the show. Leah Lewis plays George on Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew's final season is coming out in just a few days. And on here, this is based off a series of books from back in like the old days. And they decided not only to gender bend, but race bend the character of George. And so she's been prominent ever since the first season. She had a chip on her shoulder in the first season, and they also kind of depicted her not in the best light, but after that she became a central part of the group and a better character. And she is the second Asian character on a television show that I've ever seen involved in a racial black relationship. Normally on TV and in real life, you see an Asian person out of with another Asian person or that of a white person, but the fact that they chose a black person for her was really cool. PBS had an amazing teen crime drama where a group of kids were like friends with a ghost who could write and write only, and like they solved mysteries. And one of those characters was Tina Nguyen, who was played by Tram On Tran. And she was the only Asian character on the show, along with her family. And she was into journalism. In the original pilot, she had more to do. But in the newer pilot, they kind of like toned down her character. She was barely in it. And there, later on, she got into a relationship with Alex. Alex was Mexican, and that's the first time I ever saw an Asian and Hispanic person together. And she was a very smart, intelligent person, kind, sincere, and she had a love of journalism. Relic Hunter is a show I talked about before. It stars Tia Carrere, half Chinese actress who was born in Hawaii. And there she plays Sydney Fox, a professor who's like a relic hunter who goes around the world and collects relics and stuff. It was an action-packed, educational, awesome, amazing show. What was even more amazing is that the lead actress was, of course, Tina Carrere herself. For like half Asian, half like Hawaiian female to have her own show in the 90s was groundbreaking. When it comes to Asian representation, a lot of people just have to go to wrestling. In wrestling, a lot of people every once in a while will see that of an Asian wrestler, and they tend to normally dominate in like WWE and other like arenas and stuff and other wrestling promotions and stuff. Tajiri is one that comes to my mind. He won nearly every belt in the WWE except for that of the Intercontinental Championship and that of the World Heavyweight Championship. But he's won everything from like the Cruiserweight title, the Light Heavyweight title, a tag title, the US title. And he was one of the better wrestlers with a really cool gimmick. Gail Kim first appeared in WWE, and she was brought in because Jim Ross said that men love Asian women, which Vince did not believe, but later signed her anyway. Her first run in WWE, she did become champion. I believe she got injured at one point and had to vacate the title and stuff. But her first run was very bumpy. After that, she went to TNA, where she became a mega star, a women's champion, a tag champion, and one of the biggest wrestlers of all time in TNA. Only to go back to that at WWE, where later on in her second run, she was disrespected to the point where she literally just like quit like the promotion and went back to TNA, where she was respected and still is today. In the WWE, you have Asuka. Asuka is a multiple champion. She's one of the newer champions in my mind because I just kind of started rewatching wrestling again, and she was one of the people that caused me to start watching again because she's so awesome. And she has won so many titles, the NXT Women's and Tag Championship, and both the Women's SmackDown and Raw Championship. And she just won again the Raw Championship just Saturday night. And she is an amazing athlete inside the ring and just this all around great, amazing person. Just watch her YouTube channel. Io Sky is really rising up in the ranks of that in the WWE. So far, she's only been a tag champion and the NXT World Women's Champion. But she has a huge following in Puerto Rico to the point where they actually booed the actual then champion of that time. And because they really wanted her to win the belt. When it comes to Samoan people, the most of the time when you ever see them on TV in America is going to be wrestling. Samoa Joe is one of the biggest wrestlers of TNA of the time. He appeared in both WWE and is now in AEW. In WWE, he wasn't really respected, but my God, in TNA, he was the man. And when it comes to Samoan wrestlers, you gotta give it up to this family. I'm not sure how to pronounce them. Anoa'i family. Boy, it is huge. This is the family The Rock is a part of. And, you know, it started back in like the 80s with the Wild Samoans and stuff. But the first one to grab a world title that I remember is Yokozuna. I assumed he was Japanese because that's how he appeared on the show, but he was really Samoan. And he became the World WWE Champion. The first, I still believe, in that entire family. Then, of course, came The Rock, the People's Champion, who has won just about every title you can think of, from world titles to undisputed titles, intercontinental, tag titles, you name it. And of course, he is a huge movie star. Even though I'm not a huge fan of his movies, I'm a huge fan of his wrestling. And his family's legacy has went on and on to where his uncles and cousins have won multiple championships. Roman Reigns has been the Universal Champion for 1,000 days now. The Usos have been the Undisputed Tag Champions. His other cousin, Nia Jax, she was a World Women's Champion. Is it cousin or uncle? I'm not really sure. Rikishi was an Intercontinental and Tag Team Champion. And then there's Solo, I think Sakaro, I think his name is. He was, what champion was he? He was on NXT. He was like the global champion or something like that. His family has been in wrestling for decades and is only getting bigger. Taina, I think her name is. His other cousin, she was like a tag champion and stuff. And it's really interesting that, you know, when you see Samoan people, you mostly see them only in wrestling. They're not always portrayed in the best light. Sometimes they're portrayed as barbarian, savage type people. Other time they're just bullies. Every once in a while they are a baby face. And when they are, oh, they explode on the scene like The Rock did. I mean, he is the people's champion after all. On Pretty Little Liars, Janelle Parrish played that of Mona. She is of Chinese and Hawaiian descent, and she was on this show for, I believe it lasted for 7 seasons. And she was also on the short-lived spin-off series, The Professionist. Her character was the villain of the series, and she was the original A. And so she played like the bad girl and everything. And so when later on, when she was no longer A, she was still a villain working behind the scenes. And for the most part, she was kind of like a frenemy to like, the main girls of the show. And she was also highly intelligent and very good in computer hacking skills. Nico was on Marvel's The Runaway, a show that is now taken off of Hulu and Disney Plus because they didn't want to pay nobody residuals. And she was played by Lyrica, and she was literally the best character on the entire show. She was a witch, she was a devoted friend, devoted lover, intelligent. Like, she was like one of those faithful type people you could rely on, very strong in witchcraft, even though she didn't start off that way because she didn't even know she was. And she is literally people's favorite character on the show. When the entertainment business passes you by, then you gotta take matters into your own hand. That's what 3 Chinese Kiwi women did. These women live in New Zealand, and JJ Fong, Paulina Lau, and Ali Ah. I don't know how to say her last name. Look, I don't know how to say her last name. They created the web series Flat 3 that revolves around 3 women living in the same apartment, and they go through the typical hijinks of what is it, like roommate shenanigans, finding a job, love, arguing with one another. It's a really hilarious series you can watch on YouTube. And these women, after that lasted for 3 seasons, they did some more web stuff until they got their own show called Creamery. I've talked about this show. It's supposed to get a 2nd season. It's on Hulu. It's about the world has ended, at least for men. It's the apocalypse and men have died out, but women are the only survivors. There's only a handful of men that are left, and women are surprised that men have survived. It's a very funny, interesting drama comedy, and both Flat 3 and Creamery was created by Roseanne Lang. She is considered one of the most famous Asian Kiwi creators and directors. She first appeared, I saw her in, was Power Rangers Ninja Storm, where she acted. And then next thing you know, she started creating multiple series, directing stuff. She's moving on up. The CW's The 100 was a pretty good show for the most part. It dealt with a group of people who lived up in space because Earth was uninhabitable because of a nuclear fallout. And so for 100 years they was in space. They finally came back down, and one of the main characters was Monty, played by Christopher Larkin. And Monty was kind of a little bit of a genius. He was really good at computer stuff and a little bit of engineering. Not as good as the other character. His character tended to bounce in and out of the show. He felt more like a recurring character than that of a main character. He lasted for about 5 seasons until the very end, when him and his girlfriend were on the space station trying to find a new planet because once again Earth became uninhabitable. And so as they're everybody's in stasis and everything, I forget why, but he woke up early and then realized that they can't live on Earth because there's just no way. But they found another planet, so they drifted in space while everybody else slept. And they decided to live out the rest of their lives as an old married couple, because they got tired of dealing with the harshness of living on Earth and everybody fighting each other and stuff like that. It was a very sad, way to go, but at least they got to go in their own way. They had a kid, however, and their child, I forget the name of the actor, but he lasted in the final season At first, he started being a major character, but then once again, they started like writing him out of the show. The last season is atrocious, and it's not even worth like watching. But the first two seasons are really good. Third's okay. Fourth is pretty good. Five and six just aren't all like nothing to like be happy about. The Monty character, like, he was the first person on the show to actually murder one of his parents. See, his mom was brainwashed by this entity known as Allie. And so, like, before they could find like a cure to unbrainwash people, she was going to harm him and his friends, and he had to take her out. This was something very shocking because at that time none of the younger cast had, like, because they're teenagers, had, like, had to take out one of their own and stuff. Ally McBeal was a really hilarious, funny comedy drama that was on Fox, and it lasted for about 5 seasons. And in the second season, they introduced the character of Ling, played by Lucy Liu. I love myself some Lucy Liu. She played the mean girl on the show, and boy, she was ferocious. She was stuck up, she was stubborn, she was selfish, and she loved money, and that's why she loved to sue people. However, in one of the most touching episodes ever, when she cared about a young boy who died of cancer, it was revealed that she was a lawyer. And so I think in her final season, around season 4, because she didn't want to stay for the rest of the show, they made her a judge. And Lucy Liu's been acting for years. I've seen her in everything in Hercules, The Legendary Journey. I've seen her in that one episode of Beverly Hills 90210. She was also in, like, what was that called? Elementary. She's been in several movies and stuff. In Xena Warrior Princess, one of the most famous episodes of them all is The Debt. And that shows Xena traveling to a foreign land for the first time. She goes to the land of Qin. Now, I originally assumed that Qin was the older pronunciation, I can't talk today, of China, because in the series finale they went to Joppa, and that is now Japan. And in Hercules they went to Britannia, which is now Britain and stuff. So I assumed Qin was just China, but no, it's not. And I also assumed it because in a future episode, Gabrielle said when they went to China, but they never went to China. They just went to Qin. And so there we get to see flashbacks of what happened to Xena when she started to regain the use of her legs thanks to a woman by the name of Lao Mei. And so Lao Mei was like one of the most like famous Xena characters around that time. She was played by Josephine Kim. Josephine Kim was in Star Trek Generations as the helmswoman. And it's there that, like, her husband, of played by Grant McFarlane, who has sadly passed away. He was also in Power Rangers Ninja Storm. He had a son named Min Chien. And Min Chien was ruthless when he grew up. And so it turns out Min Chien, who's now played by Daniel Singh, he was a ruthless, like, ruler and stuff. And his mom told Xena if he ever gets too much out of power to take him out. So Xena goes there to just do that until Gabrielle spoils it, because Gabrielle didn't want Xena to take a life. She assumed that every life is precious, but she didn't know just how dangerous Min Chien is. And it turns out Mi Chien had his mother murdered when he was younger, but he had no idea that Lao Mei was his mother. And this was, like I said before, one of the most like epic episodes ever, because it dealt with the betrayal led by Gabrielle, and it caused friction a little between her and Xena seasons later. However, this would be followed up with a sequel episode many seasons later. 2 seasons later, and back in the bottle, a young actress by the name of Mari Matiko, she played two different characters, twins, and it turns out she was the half sister of that of Michien, therefore being the mother of Lao Mei. And not only did Lao Mei teach Xena how to fight, but she also healed her legs. And so Xena, owes a lot to Lao Mei. But one of the twins turns out to be evil and tricks Xena. So next thing you know, Xena and the twin, the good one, had to stop the bad one, and they do, only for her to be resurrected and bond with that of her brother. So both of them share the same body now, which is insane. It's like you see the face and body of one, they twist and turn really fast, and then it's the other person. It made for a really interesting episode. And so Xena and the good twin had to defeat them with the power of that Lao Mei does. However, it's like this weird magical effect. The first time it's just like a hand palm, and then the other times it's like red lightning and stuff. In the series finale of Xena, she travels to that of Japa with Gabrielle. Japa is now known as Japan. And it's there she meets Akime, and she's played by Michelle Ang. Michelle Ang went on to be in the second season of Fear the Walking Dead. And so with her character, she tricked Xena many years ago to murder this one dude. And this one guy turned out to be so bad, he turned to some kind of demon. And so because of that, all these people, I guess their souls are trapped in, or they can't die, something like that. It's been a long time since I watched the finale. And so Xena has to go back there and right her wrong that she did many years ago. It's a very samurai type inspired episode, and it ends with Xena having to sacrifice herself to, like I said before, right her wrong. Like I said before, it's been many years since I watched it. All I remember is very samurai looking, and Xena gets shot with a bunch of arrows, and there's katanas and stuff like that. And there's this demon type person who shoots out air at them and stuff like that and tries to suck them in, and Xena has to be the one to stop him. In the Walking Dead franchise, whether it be video games, comics, or especially the television show, we get introduced to Glenn, and Glenn is played by Steven Yeun. And so Steven Yeun, I'm not sure how to say his name. All right, I don't know how to say his name. I'm trying my best over here. And Glenn was a huge staple of the franchise, being there since episode 2. And he just started off as just this young guy who delivered pizzas and who didn't want no part of the zombie apocalypse. He didn't want to hang with none of these people. He just wanted to look out for himself. But then he later on realized that he's not going to make it in this new world without some help. And so he becomes a very, very intriguing character as the seasons pass on. In season 2, he falls in love with Maggie. He is the one who alerts everybody that there are zombies in the barn. After that, him and the others, they find a prison where he is captured by the governor and has to fight his way out, along with Rick and them saving him and the others. It is then he turns into a dark character because he wants nothing but revenge. He can't see past that. By season 4, he becomes a loving man and wants to marry that of Maggie. And so after that, when they get separated, he's on a quest to find her. After finding the group, they go to Alexandria, and this is when things get kind of bland and boring for the series and stuff. He stayed there, they had a kid, but sadly, he never got to see his son be born because, of course, Negan took him out just like he did in the comics. And it was one of the grossest death scenes of a human I've ever seen. In the show True Jackson, we got introduced to that of Lulu, played by Filipina actress Ashley Augusta. And she was hilarious on this Nickelodeon show. At first, she started off as just the best friend who later on became True's assistant. See, they are teenagers working in a famous fashion company. And so when Lulu first appears, she is her assistant. She's very goofy, silly in the head and can't take nothing serious. She messes up a lot, but then later sees the error of her ways. She remained on the show all the way to the end, playing the best friend role. But she was so cool to see because of her like juvenile and burst of energy personality. One of the things that was so funny about Lulu was that she was obsessed with her boyfriend Mickey J. The CW Arrowverse had a number of like heroes and villains. Mainly though, they were not Asian. However, every once in a while there would be Asian representation popping up, starting with Arrow in season 2. And then as you know, the Arrowverse started to grow more and more, Asian people was kind of not really seen in the Arrowverse that much. But then it was shows like Stargirl, who's not really part of the Arrowverse, but I like to say it is. And they had 3 Asian characters on the show. Sadly, they were all villains, all because the comic books. And so they remained villains for a good chunk of while on like the first season, and then by season 2 they slowly started to become nicer and stuff, to where in season 3 they are now the good guys trying to help save the day. Also, you can't forget about that of like the Batgirl show, where they race bent one character, Mary, and she first started off as just like an underground doctor trying to help people who were like poor and stuff like that, had an underground clinic. In the last season, however, she was affected by Poison Ivy and became Poison Ivy 2.0, but they finally gave her character a whole lot more to do. Over on the HBO Max side of things with Titans in season 2, we get introduced to that of Jericho and that of Rosa. And of course, they are the kids of Slade Wilson. And for the most part, they get a lot to do for the most part, for what was written for them. But then after season 2, they just disappeared from the show. They were just completely written out. And Hulu's The Hardy Boys, they gender and race bent the character of Biff. Elizabeth, known as Biff on the show, is played by Riley O'Donnell. And in that series, she is really cool. She's one of the better characters. She plays like the sidekick role to that of the Hardy Boys. She's very headstrong. She doesn't take no crap from nobody, especially Joe. And we get to learn that she is adopted and she wants to know who her biological mother is in season 2. Wu Assassin was a very cool series on Netflix, but sadly it only lasted for 1 season. I don't understand Netflix when it comes to all these diverse shows, but it was a really cool show. And I can't even pronounce the actor's like name, but he was in the Riot movies. And basically Wu Assassin was about this line cook chef who was later possessed by like some type of magical entity where like all these monks would kind of like inhabit his body, and he would know like martial arts, and he had to take out this great evil and stuff like that. It was a predominantly Asian show with martial arts and like ancient like Chinese folklore and stuff like that. I know the actor is half Chinese and half Native American. And I remember when I was watching, I thought this was so cool. But then some reason, towards the end of the series, they started introducing white characters. And then those white characters would be inhabited by whatever power it was that gave those people those martial arts. And I was just kind of like, why? Why would you do that? But then it ended on like a cliffhanger. So everybody assumed it would get a season 2 because of how cool the show was, but it never did. Instead, they decided to give them a TV movie just to wrap everything up. I still don't know why they couldn't have been given a season 2. This would have been so great. I mean, there is diversity on Netflix, but not much. And this was a predominantly Asian show. And a lot of people really, really enjoyed it. Into the Badlands was an amazing show on AMC. It was an Asian inspired show where Daniel Wu played that of Sunny. He's kind of like this elite assassin type dude. And so this show was very interesting. It was predominantly like, it was a mixture of different races. You had mainly white, you had black here and there, a little Hispanic here and there. And he was really the only main like Asian character for the most part. But everybody dressed like they was back in like ancient like, Asian country time and stuff like that. Like, traditional garments and stuff like that. People fought with Asian weapons, and it was kind of like odd and unique. It was kind of like, why is everybody dressed like this? Why are they fighting with these weapons? How come the cars are so old-fashioned looking cars and motorcycles and stuff? And there are no guns whatsoever in this show. But just about everybody who's like a main character knows martial arts. And it was very fluid, very clean, very graceful. And I love watching all the action. The show evolved over time. And when it started to evolve over time, that's when I got kind of bored with it by season 2. They introduced this one comedic character and stuff. And then in season 3, it was revealed that this is actually the real world. This isn't a fantasy world. Even though there's magic and people who have like this special gift that's like very destructive and stuff like that. There are these monks that can like, do pressure points. And when they do, when they hit a person, it glows. But it's set in the real world. Apparently something happened back in the day that caused people to realize, all right, no more guns, no more nuclear facilities, no more like, fancy cars and stuff like that. But then it ended on a cliffhanger and AMC decided to pull the plug on the show. I was so pissed. Even though season 2 and season 3 were not my favorite, I still wanted to see where the show was gonna go. Jamie Chung had started off in reality TV, but she later started acting, being in movies like Sorority Row and then television series where she had a guest appearance as Mulan in Once Upon a Time. But then she was added to the main cast of Fox's The Gifted. That is supposed to take place in the Fox's X-Men universe where the X-Men for whatever reason disappeared. And it was there she played Blink, a character that was seen in one of the movies played by a different actress. Dr. Ken appeared on ABC. I never watched this show, but I am a fan of Ken Jeong. And this is supposed to tell like, a fictional kind of like version of him being a doctor, because he is a doctor in real life as well as an actor. And he is a hilarious comedian who's been in Community. He has been in several movies and stuff. Sadly, though, this show was short-lived, only lasting for about 2 seasons. But it showed that of him and his Asian family, along with a colorful cast that worked at his hospital. Superstore was a show that lasted for many seasons on NBC. It is hilarious. It's basically a parody of Walmart. It's on Hulu, and there they had Asian representation and Pacific Islander representation in 3 of their stars. And however, the characters they played, well, all the characters on the show aren't perfect. That's the thing, because it's a comedy series. You have Mateo, who is a hard worker, and he wants to be the best he can be, but he can be a bit snarky at times. The other two females, one is ditzy in the head and the other one has no self-confidence whatsoever. But they do make for hilarious characters. But like I said before, none of the characters are perfect, and every character has major flaws and stuff. So, like, it's not like they're like singling them out. So You Think You Could Dance used to be an amazing reality dancing show. I used to love it until it started going downhill. I don't know where it is now because I think the last season that came out finally came out after the pandemic and stuff. But needless to say, the earlier days were the glory days. And in season 4, we had a contestant by the name of Katie, who's half Asian. I think she's half Chinese. And at first, she wasn't gonna be on the show because she wasn't sure if dancing was what she wanted to do. And so the judges were getting ready to, like, kick her off the show until, she convinced them that, yo, I can dance. She can dance so well that she was the co-winner in season 4, winning for the girls' side. And she is an amazing, amazing, amazing dancer. Warrior is a show I talked about before. I ran down season 1 and 2, a video that lasted for 2 hours, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about it. But it is now on HBO Max, which is now Max. The 3rd season is going to come out soon. And it tells the story of a guy who came to America from China looking for that of his sister. And so he gets involved in a gang that he joins. He's kind of like a good guy, kind of a bad guy. He shifts back and forth, but for the most part, he is a good guy. But he is working for a gang. Now, this show talks a lot about what America was like in the 1800s when Chinese people started coming to America. They was sadly prosecuted. They was treated very badly. They was beaten. They was killed. And this show is inspired by a lot of true life events and stuff. This is where I found out that, like, Chinese men were made into slaves in Cuba when they tried to come to America, but their ships got seized and everything, and they ended up in Cuba. And there are a lot of people who are based off of real people. Some people who are kind of based off of fictional, not fictional, there are fictional characters that are based off of real people. And then there are characters that are based off of real people. And it is insane how people were treated back in those days and stuff. And this show is actually supposed to be inspired by Bruce Lee. He came up with a pitch many years ago to ABC. They rejected him, but then they later stole his idea and came out with the show Kung Fu. If you want to hear me talk more about this show, just go find it on my channel. It's literally a 2-hour long video because I covered 2 seasons in the same video. PBS creates one of my favorite channels. I love watching their cooking shows. Who doesn't love to watch like a cooking show, And Martin Yan is one of my favorite shows on there. He has had a show on there for like decades, since like the 80s. And but I haven't seen him in a while, a good while on the show. And I don't know what happened to his series. From there, this man has the most quirkiest personality. I love the way he talks. I love how humorous he is. I love how he travels to like Asian countries and he teaches us not only about their food, but their way of life. And then there's Simply Ming. Ming, I haven't watched his show that much, but I did see one episode and I just do love watching him cook and him bringing on his guests. And it's really cool that PBS will, they have this representation that they want to show like cultures of different food and ethnicities and stuff like that. And it's really amazing how PBS does these things, like whether it's a kids show or a travel show or a cooking show, they always want to have diversity, and it's just amazing. And I want to get into some shows that I've never seen, but I either know of or just now heard of. And so let's start, of course, with Disney. One of their main Asian representation is Brenda Song. Brenda Song has been a part of Disney Channel for the better part of like 20 years and is still a part of it. And she is rocking it on Disney Channel. Of course, she played London Tipton as her main role that everybody knows her from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and also that of the Sweet Deck The Sweet Life on Deck. But she appeared in many other Disney Channel shows before, landing that gig and stuff, like Phil of the Future. I can't think of no other ones, but she's been in Disney Channel for a lot. And of course, she was Wendy Wu in their movie. Years later, they created the show Andi Mack, and Disney Channel's very first Asian family type show, where it followed the life of Andy. And I never watched this because it's Disney Channel and I was growing up at that time. But from what I heard, this is a very phenomenal show. And the actress has later went on to do some other projects on Disney Plus. One of those is Dougie Hauser or something like that. It's a reboot of Doogie Howser. And it's there we get to follow her, her half Chinese family, while she is a prodigy and a teenager working as a doctor in a hospital. It has now been renewed for 2 seasons, and you should watch the show. I'm gonna watch this show eventually because Disney Plus is taking off some of their original series, and this is scary times when it comes to Hulu and Disney Plus. Disney also had Jake Long, the American Dragon, that lasted for 2 seasons. The cast is supposed to be Asian, but they're voiced by white people. Dante Bata is really the only Asian person on there. Samurai Jack, that I never watched, lasted for 5 seasons, and sadly, Samurai Jack is not even voiced by an Asian man, and it was on Cartoon Network. Lilo and Stitch, the television series, was a spin-off of the beloved theatrical movie Lilo and Stitch. It was also a spin-off of all the direct-to-DVD movies that came out. Basically, it follows the gang trying to capture all of Stitch's relatives that were created prior to him. Personally, I couldn't get into the show or any of the direct to DVD movies, but I love the theatrical movie. But I know a lot of people love this series. Tia Carrere and the actor who I think his name is Jason Lee Scott, I believe. They reprised their role from the series along as everybody else, and they are the only 2 that are of Chinese and Hawaiian descent. However, the actress who plays Lilo is not, and I was very shocked and surprised to find that out. Boy, Nickelodeon, I had no idea they had so much Asian representation on their show. Starting back in 1996, a show called The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo lasted for that of 4 seasons. Irene Neig, I believe her name is, I'm not sure, was the main character. And this was an Asian show, where this girl solved mysteries. And her family was, a mixture of different Asian people. Pat Morita was on this show. I never once knew this show existed and lasted for 4 seasons. I'm gonna look this up on YouTube, because it has to be somewhere on the internet, because I'm very curious to watch this show. Ryan Murphy, who was in Titans and played Beast Boy for all of 4 seasons, even though they really didn't do much with his character, which was sad because Beast Boy is an amazing character and Ryan Potter is an amazing actor and martial artist. However, he did get his start on Nickelodeon with Supla Ninjas that lasted, I believe, for 2 seasons. Even George Takei is in that show. Make It Pop was a K-pop inspired teen comedy created by Nick Carter on Nickelodeon. I never knew this show existed because K-pop is really big, so they figure, okay, let's make a teen high school comedy revolve around a girl group who's trying to be into K-pop. Sadly, it did not last that long though. Josh Dela Cruz, an Asian man, is the new character who plays in Blue's Clues. I can't talk. Blue's Clues. Oh, a tongue twister right there. He is the human, host and character on this show. And after 3 different ones, they finally went with some Asian representation, and it is about time. Happy Asian and Pacific Islander month, everybody. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.